God, why do I always have to pause before it? Like I'm treating it like with
you psych yourself out, Hooper.
I really do. Like I should. It's like the first time you jump off the diving board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like why don't you just if you just jump off, like then you'll
Right, it'll be over and it's fun, but no, you're always like, it's gotta be cold though. I can't do it right now.
I wanted to just like start in with like a scream sometimes. Like you ever see Wayne's World?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like we have a great lineup coming up here on the WPIG. Isn't that right, Mr. Scream? Wait, you're not Handsome Dan? Well, then who's that guy? Well, hello, everybody, on the HooperCast universe. It is episode 94 of the HooperCast. It is I, Connor, and it is he, Dustin. Right, Dustin?
He is me, and me is Dustin.
Yes, we are a couple guys bringing you some entertainment on this. Well, I don't know what day it is you're listening to this, but if you're a true fan, you're listening to it on the weekend when I post it. Possibly Friday, but most likely Saturday.
Yeah.
We're hoping you guys are getting out to the movies and seeing some stuff and absorbing some cool stuff. And
Hooper, I got a work call. Hold on.
Oh,
Sorry.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna I don't know how to. I guess Dustin's just gonna come back. So I don't know if I don't think he pauses recording. Dustin told me before we heated the mics up, I might have a work call, so I have to interrupt you. And I guess I'm glad it didn't come in the middle of like a poignant thought of mine, because I'm apt to have so many poignant thoughts. But while he's talking, I guess I'm just gonna say some stuff. Anyway, oh God, this is scary. I feel so alone. I'm so alone. I'm so alone. So anyway, Dustin and I are going to talk about some stuff today. We're going to talk about a movie, or I'm going to talk about a movie. I think Dustin's going to corroborate some of my thoughts because I believe he's also seen it. We're going to talk about some film news and just some stuff that's happening lately in the film realm. So I don't know really what else to do until he gets back. So I'm either just going to edit this chunk out or not. Let's see if we can talk about the box office real quick. Is that Dustin? Is that Dustin?
All right. Sorry about that, Uber.
Oh, God. Thank God.
I'm good. Why?
I'm dying here by myself.
Were you talking to yourself?
Just the most boring shit. I was like frantically searching the internet for stuff like I could search, and I was just like running out of steam after 10 seconds. Just like, oh, I got nothing to talk about. Nothing. I have nothing. I was like sweating. Like, I guess we'll talk about the weekend box office. So I guess the number one is War Room. I don't really know what that's about.
I don't know anything.
Okay, well, number two is Go Walk in the Woods, which let me just update you on what I'm watching now currently. All right,
oh,
so
no.
You're still rolling?
Yeah, I'm still rolling.
Okay. Anyway, well, let's just keep moving on. So I'm going to talk about a movie, and then Dustin and I are going to get into some film news. I was trying to find something to watch for this episode, and I was searching through, couldn't find anything that really had a reason. And then right as I was sort of reminded, like we just sort of recently passed the 1 year anniversary of the death of Robin Williams. Mm-hmm. So, and I came across Bicentennial Man on HBO. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I've never seen this. It's popped up in one way or another throughout the years for me. So let me go ahead and give this one a shot. And I'm really glad I did. And I think the kicker, you know what it was? You know what the kicker was? Because I was like, okay, Robin Williams is in it. That's a pretty good one. And I remember being interested in the concept like when it came out. Mm-hmm. But the kicker, what got me to actually watch it was I saw that the director was Chris Columbus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I said, all right, I'm in. This was a 1999 film, and one of the producers is actually Mark Radcliffe, Daniel Radcliffe's father.
Oh, really?
Which is how he knows Chris Columbus, and
partially
assuming that that's one of the reasons Daniel Radcliffe was actually cast as Harry Potter in The Sorcerer's Stone, which was directed by Chris Columbus. So it was interesting during the credits to see, like, oh, Mark Radcliffe. Okay, I know who that is, you know.
Mm-hmm. So you might could say without this film, there would be no Harry Potter.
Possibly. I mean, I think they might be frequent collaborators. I didn't really do the research, but they might be. But I mean, at least, I mean, this was like this was probably the year before they were casting it. They probably had already cast it. Anyway, this is a science fiction movie. A little bit of a comedy, but it's mostly a drama. And it stars Robin Williams, and it's actually based on an Isaac Asimov story.
Mm-hmm.
Did not know that until I Googled it. So the novel is called The Positronic Man, and that's by Isaac Asimov and Robert Silverberg, and that's actually based on Asimov's original story, which was The Bicentennial Man, which came out in 1976, which was the bicentennial of America. It's a really thoughtful story, this movie and this story about like humanity and prejudice and mortality and what it means, to be human, and freedom and love and stuff. So it's exploring these really deep themes, and it's through the eyes of this android played by Robin Williams. So the movie starts in 2005, and of course, being the Bicentennial Man, it goes, the movie ends in 2205.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam Neill buys his family this android. They're well off, and he's got a wife and a couple kids. One of them really sucks and really has no story development at all. She's just there to be a bitch the whole time.
Sure.
And the other daughter's played by the Pepsi girl. Remember her?
Oh, yeah. That's Jesse Eisenberg's sister.
Really? Oh, wow. Whoa. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they look alike.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they do. You're right. Oh, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
How old is that chick now? 23? She's only 23?
Really? Wow.
Wow. She was born in 92. Hallie Kate Eisenberg.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, he buys them this android, and so the little girl calls him Andrew. She's like, "What's an Andrew?" So his name's Andrew now. Mm-hmm. And he essentially, at a certain point, like, he breaks a figurine of hers on accident, and then he actually carves her a new one. And so Sam Neill's like, oh, he possesses creativity, and he mentions that he enjoys it, which is not, which is an emotion, So he basically, throughout the course of the movie, is wanting to foster the because he's rich and he's bored, and I don't know, he wants to foster. That's the thing, like, Sam. A good thing that he was bought by this guy who actually wants to develop Andrew's full potential, and not some robot racist who would just would turn him off and then there's no movie. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right.
It's good that he's born into he's owned by an incredibly tolerant man.
Right, exactly.
With no fear of increasing the capability of an artificial intelligence. But when you have the voice of Robin Williams and you're really polite, it's like, oh, God, I just want to help you,
I know, right?
So Andrew becomes more and more intelligent as he starts to read more and more, and Sam Neill structures these lessons for him where he can learn social things, and so he starts to he basically teaches him how to tell jokes at some point. And then the movie sort of throughout the years, people in his life start to die.
Right.
eventually Sam Neill gets old and he dies. And I mean, at one point, Andrew, before that, he obtains emancipation from Sam Neill. He wants freedom. He doesn't dislike the family or whatever, but he wants to. He studied history and he studied all the wars and the revolution, people who fought for freedom, and he wants it. He's like, that must be something worth having. So he begins to want these things, and so throughout the movie, he's on this increasingly meaningful quest for independence and for humanity. He when he starts to finally get grips with like the fact that he's essentially immortal, then he starts to try and figure out ways where he can age and ultimately die. And I'm not going to give away the ending. I mean, but it's a really sweet movie. And I was reading how it did critically at the time. I mean, it was a box office flop. It was like $100 million budget, and it only made $87 million at the box office. And it has like a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the biggest complaint seems to be that that the script is bad, and that it starts pretty strong, but it's too sentimental. And I just didn't see it that way. I get it. It's not like that's a completely off-base criticism, but I don't think it's sentimental. No, at no point during the story is there really like it's not like a hero's journey where there's because the main character's a robot, so his whole thing is going to be a lot more of nuanced and gradual changes, because for half the movie he doesn't really have the capacity to show any emotion. Sure. And at some point, like, he gets a nervous system installed, and so he can actually like feel like physical and emotional pain, and so it's a lot more gradual than the typical hero's journey of like the down and out character and the mentor, and then the and then the peak, and then the valley, and then the redemption or whatever. There's not any of that. It's not that kind of story. It's just a continual. But it's just something you follow because you want to see where this thing ends up.
Right.
And you saw this, right?
Yeah, you mentioned critically and box office and whatnot. I saw this in theaters when it came out.
Oh.
And I haven't seen it since. So my knowledge of it is limited just to what I remember from 1999. But surprisingly, I remember a fair amount of it. Like, I remember some specific shots, and I remember some specific things. And some of this that you're saying is sort of ringing bells for me. So I have wanted to reevaluate this film for a while now. I haven't got around to it, but maybe I will. But I remember going to see this with my mom and my dad. I would have been probably in fourth grade, maybe fifth.
It would have been.
I guess probably
10.
about fifth. Yeah, so probably about fifth grade. And so I went with my mom and my dad, and for some reason they were under the impression, as was I guess just because of them, that this was going to be a comedy. Because it's Robin Williams and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess around this point, Robin hadn't really kind of, really been that, dramatic actor yet that he would become. But, well, I guess he had. That's not true. Anyway, whatever. The point is, we thought it was a comedy. So I remember leaving that and my parents saying that was awful. Like, that was a waste of our money, like, blah, blah, blah. And me thinking the same thing because I was like, it wasn't funny. I didn't laugh. So I don't, and so that's the thing that sticks out to me when I think of Bicentennial Man is it's not funny. That's the thing that always comes to my head. So I've wanted to rewatch this for a while because I'm thinking, okay, now that I know that it's not a funny movie, let me look at it, with some fresh eyes. So you're really making me want to rewatch this movie. But yeah, like I said, I don't remember a whole lot about it other than just it wasn't funny. So
he had done a few serious things by now, I think, because let's see, there was his earliest serious film that I feel like people overlook sometimes is Dead Poet Society.
Right.
I think a couple years later there was The Fisher King with Terry Gilliam. Mm-hmm. That was the same year he did Hook. too.
Right, and Good Will Hunting was before this too.
Yeah.
So,
Good Will Hunting was, what was it, the year before? It was a couple years before.
Yeah, it was sometime before.
But throughout all this, there's Aladdin and Jack and the Birdcage and Flubber. You know,
Right,
so that's
right,
all
right.
at the same time. So those obviously got probably more exposure than some of these other ones. So people still, because what was it? Well, yeah, 1 Hour Photo was in 2002, and that's when people really started noticing. And Insomnia with Christopher Nolan that
Right,
same
right.
year. So that's when people really started starting to kind of notice him as like a serious actor.
Right.
Which is crazy how people can like overlook like, you know, essentially a film every year that shows some dramatic range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just because everybody at that point, I mean, I can speak for my parents, especially, you know, at that point would have still remembered more of Mork and Mindy than any of this other stuff. So I think that's just sort of the downside of sitcom acting, is that you're going to be, especially if it's a successful show like that was, you're going to be, even though you're stretching your dramatic wings, you're still going to be associated with, you know, the goofy, funny man always. And so anything that you're in obviously is going to be goofy and funny. And so I know for a fact that's why my parents went to see this movie.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And I don't know if that was a fault of marketing too. Maybe they marketed it
I think they
as
marketed,
a comedy.
I remember some of the goofy parts, like him getting operated on, you know, by a guy and just saying, like, how's it going down there, fellas, or whatever. And he's like, you know, his chest is open and there's a bunch of robot parts in there and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I bet, you know, what studio is this? Not that really matters, but, okay, Columbia and Touchstone. So, yeah, it might have been one of those things where they were like, unsure of it, and then maybe that had something to do with the box office. People came expecting a comedy.
Right, it could have been.
Because this on Wikipedia, it's saying science fiction family comedy drama film.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not really a comedy. Like we said, that every movie has some funny parts.
Sure.
I'm sure.
I mean,
I think there's a couple of jokes in The Road. Like, there's
yeah.
every movie's got funny elements because that's just what life is like.
That's life, yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's a comedy film.
Right. If you look at this on IMDb, it says comedy, drama, fantasy. So comedy even comes first.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Strange.
it's definitely a miscategorization of the film, I think, because it has a lot to say about. I mean, because throughout the movie, there's the questions of like, you know, I mean, and again, like this story is not possible without an incredibly tolerant Sam Neill basically telling his children, Andrew will not be treated as a thing; you will treat him as a person. And so maybe that's one fault of it, I guess, in a way, because then it's like, okay, well, there's no real conflict to him, you know, learning. So maybe that's what it is. Like, it's not a story about lots and lots of roadblocks, even though I think the story wants you to think that like there's roadblocks to him basically obtaining knowledge and gaining humanity. But those are some outside forces, but all it really takes is the deep pockets of Sam Neill to, you know, like the robotics company wants to shut him down. And Sam Neill basically says, during this repair, if you tamper with him in any way, I'll sue the shit out of you and I'll take your whole company and blah, blah, blah. I have a good lawyer. Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know, but it's a really sweet film, I think. And, and for the only reason it felt long to me is because I watched it in 2 parts at night on my phone. But it's 2 hours and 10 minutes, but it really is pretty well paced, I thought.
Yeah.
I just was checking the duration every now and then because I think I was trying to get a sense of like act structure maybe, or like how far are we in the movie, you know? So at no point during it is it like a discernible, you can tell what act you're in other than looking at the time. But I think it's a sweet film and, you know, a good performance for Robin Williams. You know, good film for Chris Columbus. You know, relatively good visual effects. I mean, every now and then there's like a cityscape shot. I mean, at one point, like way in the future, they show the Golden Gate Bridge in the background, and it actually has like 2 roads. Like it has the regular one, and it has like an upper decker. Like it's basically a double decker bridge. Just the idea, and of course this is before 9/11, but like the New York shot, like all the buildings are way taller, like out of the frame, like you can't even see the top of them. So the twin towers are like really super tall.
Right.
All the bridges are like doubled up. It's it's just a little bit of interesting future world building that you and I always like to see.
Yeah.
In movies where it's like, oh, I wonder, this is how in this movie, this is how these filmmakers saw the future. And it began, again, like when the movie begins, the first thing I noticed was it says, the not too distant future, which I've said before that I really like in science fiction because it doesn't date the film. But then again, it's very clearly 2005. I think they throw a date up at some point. Well, actually, you know what? I think they only have this information because that must have been the official notes from the film, because Wikipedia says it starts in 2005 and IMDb says all that. But I don't think in the movie they ever actually mention the year. Like every time they do a time jump, it's like 16 years later, many years later, blah, blah, blah. So at some point they just say he's 200 years old. But they never do timestamp it. So somebody did. But I don't know where they got the starting point of 2005.
Yeah.
And the only thing they did wrong with the age makeup is not make Sam Neill fatter. Because he's still like, thin and handsome, just kind of gray and old looking, but,
Yeah.
There's one joke, there's one line in the movie I almost laughed out loud at. It's not supposed to be funny. It's when he goes to Sam Neill and Sam Neill's like, on his deathbed. And he's like, how are you, sir? And he's like, well, Andrew, I'm dying. But other than that, I'm pretty good. I was like...
Here's a question. I don't remember. Does Sam Neill have his accent? Does he put on an American accent for this movie?
He attempted to.
Okay.
I could kind of tell, like, because I was remembering during it, like, wait, what is he? I think because he's Australian, I think.
Yeah, he is,
It's pretty... It plays because he just sounds kind of rich and refined. Like, he doesn't have any sort of regional American accent. He just has, like, an upper crust kind of accent.
Sure.
So I think his dialect coach said, all right, well, that'll be the compromise.
That's good enough.
Yeah. So
no need to stress you out. You're good.
Yeah. Anyway, that's Bicentennial Man. So if you want to watch that, that's on I watched it on HBO Go. But you can rent this thing anywhere. You can rent it on Amazon, iTunes, go to a library and rent it. It should be pretty widely accessible. And, it's got that real kind of tender, that real kind of, what would you call the kind of affectation of Chris Columbus's films? Like, it's got this...
I like to think of it as like a...
I want to say sort of precious, but that sounds too cushy.
I like 90s optimism.
Yeah.
Because if I remember right, this movie has that like jingly kind of like dun, 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 kind of like score behind it.
Yeah.
So to me, that always reminds me of like the Santa Claus,
like a whimsical, optimistic kind of tone.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all kind of optimistic-y and fairy tale-y in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, well, let's move on. I kind of went on that a little longer than I meant to. So,
it's all good.
Okay, well, first order of business. I don't have any of these facts in front of me. I'm just sort of going off what I remember, but I assume you read some of this too. In the past couple weeks, there's been some shakeups at Marvel.
Yes, there has.
And from what I can remember off the top of my head, it was essentially that there was years of frustration for Kevin Feige, who's the head of like Marvel Studios or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's the executive producer of all the Marvel films, all the Avengers films, and he's sort of masterminded the interlocking stories. He's responsible for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if you like the Marvel movies, you like Kevin Feige. He's a big deal. Mm-hmm. It was basically years of frustration for Kevin Feige because he was having to deal with the actual Marvel Studios CEO, whose name is like Ike Perlmutter or something. This guy's name is Ike, and this thing called the Marvel Creative Coalition or Marvel Creative Committee or something, who were made up of a few people, like people who otherwise by themselves were solid people, like like some of the, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but basically people who were in big positions at Marvel Comics and or other entertainment things. Like, you know, I'm sure when the group was formed, it was like, hey, we got a fucking A-list of players here. This is going to be great. But apparently between Ike and the MCC, it was really difficult to get certain things done. They were sort of a hindrance, whether it was in the form of certain notes or whatever. But it was allegedly their notes on Ant-Man that actually ran off Edgar Wright, and it was had nothing to do with Kevin Feige or Disney. It was the MCC and Ike, and it was basically like there was too much interference from those people in the films. And so I think after many years of complaining about it, Disney basically, Bob Iger basically, you know, Disney CEO came in and was like, okay, look, he's not going to report to Ike anymore. You know, Ike's not in charge of these Marvel films anymore. Now he is still over Marvel television. So sorry, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans, the show's going to continue to be mediocre at best because of all the hands in the cookie jar.
Right.
But from what I understand it, Bob Iger basically said, Kevin Feige, you report to me. You don't have to listen to any of these other people. And so the idea behind all this is that all the Marvel films are about to get even better. Or if you've had problems with them, you know, which there are some very justified grievances with the movies, as Dustin can attest to. You know, this potentially enables them to be better, because the guy who seems to have all the good ideas is not going to be held down by the people who seem to have all the stupid ideas. As far as I know, there is potential that maybe we don't know everything, and that it's probably good to not just let Kevin Feige make all the decisions. So I guess we'll see. But the first film that seems to be that seems to be impacted by the new leadership will probably be. It'll probably be after Doctor Strange. I think Doctor Strange, they said, is too far into pre-production for any of this to really ripple over to it.
Yeah.
But after that, you might notice a difference. Maybe
sure.
Not. Who knows?
The thing is, like, for me, Ike Perlmutter is obviously a businessman. He's not a creative sort.
Yeah.
So, and he's a super successful businessman. Like, came from nothing, now CEO of Marvel. Some division of Marvel or whatever. I think Stan Lee is still the legit CEO of Marvel, but
I think Marvel Entertainment, I think, probably is the company letterhead.
Yeah, and so Ike Perlmutter, but obviously he's a businessman, so he's sort of been the one holding the purse strings. So that's really, to me, where the conflict is, and that Kevin Feige, being more creative, is saying, like, hey, we want the Hulk in this film. And Ike is over in the background going, I don't see it. You know, there's going to be too much money to spend on visual effects. No. And so he's kind of been the guy that does that. And so evidently one of the big frustrations was Civil War. And this is what really brought this to a head, because you've got so many actors involved in Civil War. It's like its own Avengers film, which evidently Ike was not prepared for. And these disputes over, you know, which actors to allow in and which to leave out because of their, you know, negotiated salaries and whatnot, was a huge point of contention. And from what I read, it almost led to Kevin Feige quitting, because you wouldn't have been able to make Civil War creatively the way it should have been made. And I think that Civil War itself is probably what caused the restructuring, because like they had to push and push and push to get the movie made that they wanted made. And while I think they probably did end up getting it made, you know, it was just a fight. So I think the restructuring kind of comes from that. So now if Feige thinks, okay, this story would be better suited if Robert Downey Jr. stopped by. Well, now that can happen because Ike isn't the one controlling the purse strings. Bob Iger is. And Bob Iger is like, yeah, whatever you want. I mean, you're making us billions of dollars. I don't care. And so whereas Ike was more conservative with, you know, what he was giving out. So I think the big thing is just that the films may be a little more interconnected now, because some of the people who could have before kind of bounced around the movies, but weren't able to, will now be able to do that. So, for instance, let's pay Downey Jr.'s day rate and have him for 3 days, whereas Ike would have been like, no, just do it without him. I mean, you don't. If you're just going to use him for 3 days, why even bother? So theoretically now there's, more freedom story-wise to do stuff like that, which, like we said, may be a good thing, may be a bad thing. It's always argued that when people are given too much freedom, then they go off the rails. But when they have like limitations to work within, then it actually makes them more creative about how to do it.
George Lucas is the
prime
pinnacle of the example for this.
He is. When budget was an issue and when nobody believed in him, like he churned out some awesome stuff. Mm-hmm. And then when they were like, yeah, George, whatever you want, then we get garbage. So we'll see. I don't really expect that happening to the MCU because there are still so many hands in it. I mean, Feige may be, the head honcho, but I really
There's
don't
still directors and writers and producers involved.
I don't think
making overlapping decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's not like he's going to direct, write, and produce all these films by himself.
No. So I think I don't know that we will see much of a change in the movies. If any change, I think they may just feel more interconnected now than they did. So something like Iron Man 3 may have had more connectedness to the other things. So nevertheless, there's that. I think the big thing now is going to be a larger distance between TV and movie. So things like Daredevil coming over to the Avengers, I really don't know that that'll happen now. Because the way that the TV is structured, like you said, Ike Perlmutter at the top, right below him is Jeff Loeb. And so if Jeff wanted to bring Daredevil to the MCU, theoretically, that's got to be cleared with Feige and Perlmutter, who don't see eye to eye.
Right.
And, almost made each other quit. So I don't know that that'll happen now.
Which might be to the benefit. I mean...
It could be, but then that lays waste to some of the plans with, say, the Defenders or whatever to maybe have a movie. We'll see. It's all up in the air. But yeah, I don't know. One of my big complaints with Daredevil, if you'll remember, was it felt like a waste of time because I don't have to watch it to keep going with the MCU, but it's billed as a part of the MCU. So to me, that makes it feel like filler. So now my concern is that all of that is going to feel more like filler than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my concern with the TV side of it. I just think there will be a bigger gap, and Coulson ever coming back to the MCU, I just don't think that's going to happen. So we shall see. But theoretically, for the films themselves, this is a good thing.
Right. I think Kevin Feige and Marvel's first, or let's say Disney. Kevin Feige and Disney's first priority was we need to fix whatever is keeping the movies from being the best they can be. And right now, the biggest source of conflict, ironically, during Civil War,
right,
is. Did you already make that joke?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yay. This is the biggest source of conflict right now, so we need to fix this. And then I think the next thing is, it could be a good thing that all the TV stuff's not going to be in the cinematic universe, but it would be nice if now that this is settling, they can find ways, now that they're not basically struggling for power over each other or influence over the story, competing with each other, maybe they can find a way like, listen, we want certain elements of this to coexist, and we shouldn't, this is going to make money. We should both realize that, and... and now not to knock Ike Perlmutter, because the instinct to have an actor absent from a film rather than 3 days, or to sort of be frugal, is good generally for any other kind of project. But I think the MCU is a whole. This is a whole new animal in terms of no, people want to see Downey Jr. in this, and it's worth it to pay him for his time, especially when his time is going to be pretty limited. I mean, we're not asking him to sign, a big ass contract for a multi-picture deal. We're going to ask him to show up for a week and be Iron Man. We'll pay him for each day, and I know you don't really want to do that, but it's going to mean a whole lot to be able to put his name on the poster. And or have him show up in the film unexpectedly and enrich it for the fans because that's what they want. They want interconnectedness. The biggest thing everyone always wonders in all these solo films is where was this character? Where was Hawkeye? Where was all this? And it's the answer is always the answer itself breaks the fourth wall because it's always money, and all of a sudden the set dressing on the stage falls down and you realize you're watching a play. Like
sure.
you forget that you're not immersed in the story because you're like money.
Yeah.
So, I understand his instincts. I just think this is probably the one realm of business where they don't apply, and I don't necessarily fault him for that. Like I said, good instinct. Otherwise, so
yeah.
What was the Civil War story you had that was a sort of a companion piece to all this? That was
so the latest. I don't know if it's a rumor or I guess it's been confirmed at this point, is that Civil War will not be about the Superhero Registration Act, which was the whole reason for the story in the comics.
Yeah.
But instead this will be about something called the Sokovia Accords.
Okay. That rings a bell.
Yeah.
In that credit scene, right? They mentioned the Accords.
They do. So that theoretically this has nothing to do with like superhero identities, but something to do with these accords are splitting these heroes apart from one another, which to me is simultaneously okay with me and not okay with me, because
I'm right with you.
Yeah, because you think about Civil War. As a fan, you're going to want, okay, if you're going to call this Civil War, then do the story that we're expecting. But on the other hand, it's kind of okay to also use the Civil War as a concept, the heroes at war, but change the reason they're at war. It seems okay. So on both sides, I can see both sides of the coin. I understand if you'd be upset or not about this. I could go either way, But the real concern for me is then that having this be about something with Sokovia or whatever really then draws into question why Spider-Man's a part of this at all. Whereas if it's about secret identities, then Spidey's involvement makes a lot of sense. Or someone like Ant-Man or whoever, like the fact that this was about people keeping their secrets secret was such a strong concept and such a moving concept for a character like Peter that it just seems kind of out there now to call the Civil War and not feature that at all. I don't know, but I mean, what do you think about this, Hooper? I mean, do you think they're making a mistake here?
Well, on the one hand, I'm glad that they at least release. Well, I mean, I don't know where this article. I don't know what the source of this information is. Not that it's not good. It's just I don't know if they released like a statement, like what the plot is or something, like a press release. Is that what it is?
Let me read this real quick.
Because if they released it, then I mean, I'm at least glad they're making it clear what the actual plot is, so that they don't, so the audiences don't feel entrapped and tricked when they walk into the movie expecting a registration act, and they don't get that, so they won't feel betrayed by like they've been kind of tricked. So I guess personally for me, I'm glad that I know what they're going for, so I don't walk in expecting the source material. And I think that's their way of going like, listen, obviously we can't put the X-Men in this, which they're a part of. They're a part of the comic book. There's already so many things from the source material we cannot put in this film, both for the sake of just time, money, story length, and whatever. it's going to be different enough from the comic already that it will never satisfy people who really love the comic and want it to be just like the comic.
Sure.
So I think this was their way of saying, by the way, the plot's not quite the same too. So for me, I guess I'm grateful to be prepared for that.
Sure.
So, and that doesn't really disappoint me because when you think about it, like, superhero registration would have worked, but that's always kind of been, even though that franchise is kind of winding down, Registration Act was always the X-Men's realm. That was a big part of the second movie, I believe. But I mean, really all three movies, but maybe not the third one as much. That was all about the Cure, but the first two were basically about we want mutants to register. We want to know who they are and what they can do. So I kind of feel like that's Fox's realm. As stupid as their realm kind of is, mostly with their superhero movies, like that's sort of their territory, and it's never been a part of the MCU until Civil War. And I think you get the same spirit of the law, if you will, the same spirit of the story by having the Sokovia Accords, which I assume includes some form of registration without being the Mutant Registration Act.
Sure.
So it's going to effectively be the same thing.
Yeah, my point about it is, I mean, look, as cool as this whole, registering your secret identity kind of thing is, we don't really have anybody in the MCU that even has secret identities, do we?
Exactly.
Like, nobody's out there like Clark Kenting. Like,
no. Everyone knows who Iron Man is. Everyone knows who the Hulk is. Everyone knows who Thor is, and Captain America, and now Black Widow from after Winter Soldier.
Civil War. Yeah, Winter Soldier.
And no one really knows who Hawkeye is, but that's one dude, and he doesn't wear a mask.
Right, exactly.
And
he's a government agent. He's not even
a government employee. Like his name's somewhere.
Right.
And that's all I can think. I mean, no one has a secret identity.
Right. The Vision. There's no like, nobody's out there living among humans except for maybe Ant-Man. So you got Ant-Man. Well, okay, Ant-Man, Daredevil, and Spider-Man. That's it. Really.
Right. One of which we haven't even seen at all, and only one of which we've seen in a film, by the way.
Right, exactly.
One's on TV, and one we haven't even looked at yet. And Ant-Man just showed up, so it's kind of unfair to make him register. Like, I just got here.
Right, exactly. And on top of that, too, going back to sort of my review of Ant-Man, there's no, like, inclination that he's going to continue being Ant-Man. Like, there was nothing, how, like, the Spider-Man movies ended with him swinging through the city, like, who am I? I'm Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Ant-Man didn't end that way, where it's like, okay, I guess I'm Ant-Man now. Yeah. So, theoretically, I mean, Ant-Man just isn't anymore, so who knows?
We know Ant-Man will be Ant-Man, but within his own story, in terms of what his expectations are, he was Ant-Man for a specific reason, and then the last thing he knows is this black dude with these robotic wings wants to talk to him.
Right.
And that's all he knows.
Exactly.
But there's no like, hey, I'm going to do this from now on, because there's no ongoing obligation of Ant-Man like Spider-Man. Spider-Man's always stopping crime no matter what. He feels like he's the guardian of New York. Ant-Man, he's just like, hey. All right.
Spider-Man is, with great power comes great responsibility. Ant-Man is, well, they hired me to do a thing, and I did the thing.
Yeah, that was a crazy few days.
Yeah, man, that was a lot of fun.
Oh, that was awesome.
Maybe I'll do that again. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's that. But anyway, I'm not really super disappointed about it because
disappointed.
While I think superhero registration is a really fun concept, it's been done. It doesn't have to be done again. I mean,
it's just not essential to this franchise.
Right. I mean, even if so you think about stuff like the X-Men movies. You brought up the X-Men movies who kind of deal with something like that. Or Watchmen. Or you think about The Incredibles. It's been done. I'm not really worried about it being done again. So,
yeah. And like I said, when you have something that's effectively the same thing, so I understand. I know it's going to piss a lot of people off, though. People are going to be like, well, it's not even Civil War anymore. Oh my God! Who cares?
Yeah, it's still got heroes fighting against each other, so it's Civil War.
As much as you and I talk about comic book movies, and as much as certain things, I still agree with people who say that nerds get way too upset about comic book movies. Because if anyone's upset that the story's going to differ that much, that's stupid.
Yeah.
You having problems with the villains in movies, that's not even really specific to comic books. That's just that's a story structure critique. You know, I don't think we've ever gotten mad at something. The most petty thing I can think of for myself that I've gotten mad at with comic books is if they're trying to change the race or gender of a character, because I just think that's, you know, whatever. And you could argue that's kind of like nerdy rage, but 99% of what we complain about with these films I do not think falls under that heading of like this petty whatever. But like it really is stupid for people to get angry that the storyline and half the characters from Civil War are not in this film, because you have to realize it just doesn't make any sense. And they've already got an ironclad reason for the government to want to know about the superheroes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. Keeping in time with comic book stuff. What's up with Superman not being so his losing his mojo?
Dude, I am so like I'm so ready for this movie just to be over. And the reason I say that is like I'm looking forward to it and I want it to be really, really good. But it's just like every day it seems like I'm reading something about something stupid that they're doing, and it all revolves around Superman. Because okay, so Superman kicked off their universe, okay? And I'm like, all right, cool. So stick with Superman, do some more Superman stuff. But they're like pushing him to the side. And I understand Man of Steel was, you know, mixed critically at best, and it wasn't, you know, the biggest hit in the world box office wise. But it did okay, and there were people who liked it, and there were people who hated it, but whatever. I think a lot of the people who hated it just got butthurt when people were like, oh, but the buildings all got destroyed. Yeah. But did you see all the destruction? Oh, my gosh. And like that's a valid concern for a movie. So, you know, okay, so anyway, but here's the deal, right? So
Zod wasn't very nice to those people.
He tried to kill some people.
I mean, he tried to hurt them.
I heard this the other day, and I thought it made perfect sense. After Man of Steel came out, everybody was like, why didn't Superman like move the fight somewhere else, like over the ocean or something where there weren't people? And I'm like, and I think
because water's really, really hard to animate, number one.
Yes. I think it was a guy at Collider or something who said, you do realize like if Superman had like flown away, that would have been best case scenario for Zod. Zod wouldn't have followed him and been like, okay, I'm going to kill you. He would have been like, okay, well, I'm going to keep killing people. That's my goal.
Continue the world building machine.
Right, yeah. I mean, okay, you can leave if you want. Like, so how's Superman, what's he going to do? Like, punch Zod and be like, okay, now you're over the ocean. And Zod's not going to be like, all right, well, I'm going back. I mean, I'm not going to stay here. We're going to go back. I'll punch you back, and then we'll go back over there. So, anyway, whatever. Never mind. The point is,
right?
There were people who didn't like Man of Steel, and that makes sense. Warner Brothers has such a sort of a stick up their butt about Man of Steel because they're not confident, it seems, in that interpretation of the character. So what originally was Man of Steel 2 gradually became Batman vs. Superman. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that because I knew Man of Steel 2 was still down the pipeline. Because if Batman gets a trilogy and then gets followed up with a reboot a few years later, then I would expect a Superman reboot that didn't do well and then is rebooted again to at least get a trilogy this time.
Right.
And so, because he hasn't had a trilogy, he hasn't had more than one film since the 80s. So I'm like, okay, this is our chance. You know, you make 3 Superman movies, one of them's going to hit the right spot for everybody, and this is going to be great. Well, so then we start hearing about Batman sort of taking over this movie. We start hearing about the inclusion of other characters like Aquaman and Wonder Woman, and okay, fine. It seems like Superman's getting the shaft again, but okay. And then the latest rumor that we talked about last time, Hooper, was that Man of Steel 2 was on indefinite hold. I don't know why. I guess just maybe they weren't super thrilled with whoever's pitching or whatever.
Super thrilled.
They just don't know where to go with it. Even though George Miller apparently was interested, and you would think that would be like a huge vote of confidence.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but nevertheless, we talked about it last time that this sequel's on indefinite hold, which was a huge blow for someone like me who loves Superman and just wants to see him done right and explored as a character in a way that he hasn't been. So this latest rumor is the worst so far. Worse than putting that off, whatever. This rumor is that Warner Brothers is so taken with Ben Affleck as Batman, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I love Batman, and I love that there's somebody bringing him to life in a way that people enjoy. But they're so taken with him that they want more of him in Batman vs. Superman at the expense of Superman. And to me, this is just a huge thing. So this means recutting the film or reshooting certain things to like have more scenes with Batman, so that Warner Brothers would be satisfied with the amount of Batman in the film, who they've already announced Ben Affleck is working on a trilogy for. And meanwhile, Superman has nothing. And to me, this is just a huge problem, because I think we talked about it briefly last time, that Superman needs to be the linchpin for the DC universe. Because at that point, he's the only character that all the other characters can look up to and aspire to be. So therefore, he needs to be the crux of the whole thing. And then if you do the death of Superman, it means something. Mm-hmm. But if you just have him pop up randomly until he dies, then it doesn't mean anything. So anyway, the fact that they're even removing him from his own movie now is ridiculous. And I don't know if this is that they have a problem. The rumor postulates on a couple of different things. One is that Henry Cavill is a little boring to watch. It also says that maybe in the scenes with Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, Ben is just kind of like miles above him in terms of charisma. And so, therefore, he's stealing the show, so why not give him more of it?
Wait,
these are all
Ben
just
Affleck is miles ahead in the charisma department?
That is one of the thought processes. Yeah, exactly. So we shall see what happens. I really hope they don't go back and edit this thing so that Superman has less to do. Because in a movie called Batman vs. Superman, I would expect to see a fair amount of Superman. Probably like 50% Superman, 50% Batman. Or at least like 40 of each and then 10% of Justice, I guess. And, but I'm not, anyway, so whatever. As a Superman fan, this is just super, I keep saying that. This is extremely disappointing. Because when are we going to get to see Superman again?
There's something to be said for not overthinking or over tinkering with what you have. I think it's really, I think they've been looking at this and then they've been thinking about it too long, and they just started, as someone who does this with his own life, if you sit and think about something too long, you're going to find things wrong with it, you're going to freak out, you're going to make changes, and that's really not what they should be doing. And part of what's wrong with that is that this movie's been in production for so long. I feel like
it has been.
I don't know if it's longer than it typically would have been, but I just think with everything, I think with the amount of public, the amount of publicity or I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm just gonna call it pre-production, even though it's not. Even though obviously there's shooting and post now, at this point. But I see it as a 2-year pre-production on this movie. I see it as all this planning and all this press and all this whatever, and now it's been shot and we've seen a couple trailers and whatever, and now it's in post, and I just feel like this is not the time to be messing and making giant changes to the story, because obviously you wrote it. You shot for what you wrote, and now in the third stage of production, you're going to start be making sweeping changes about the amount of Superman in a movie where he's, the lead, basically.
Right.
Like, Batman's the new guy. He's the new guy in this movie. So even if he is right up there at top billing with Superman, he is still the new guy on the block. Superman is still considered the lead of the story,
right?
And you're worried that he's in the film too much.
Well, see, but this concerns me because even from the beginning, I kind of felt like this was going to be Batman's story. Because, okay, let's just look at the trailer, for instance. You see Ben Affleck running towards the disaster of Metropolis. I get a feeling that that's sort of where the movie's going to start, right? That's sort of that's Bruce's inciting. Same thing. That's Bruce Wayne's inciting incident, right? That, okay, this menace needs to be stopped. So I kind of felt like, the inciting incident is going to be Batman doing something, which sort of by default makes him the protagonist.
Right.
In a weird way, because we know we're also supposed to be rooting for Superman, who we should be siding with and saying he's not a bad guy. And now here's a guy antagonizing him. So in a weird way, your protagonist is going to be your antagonist. Because the guy starting trouble, the guy starting the conflict, the guy starting the film, sounds like your protagonist, is going to be antagonizing the guy that isn't doing anything wrong. So it's a weird situation to begin with. And when you take into account that the guy that's inciting everything, Bruce Wayne, we don't have any context for, you kind of start to feel like in this film we're going to have to spend more time with Batman. So if that's the case, from the get-go we're going to be spending more time with Batman than Superman, and now we're saying we want to spend even more time with Batman, that's the problem. The problem is it wasn't 50-50. It was 50, or it was 60-40, and now it's going to be 75-25. That's the issue. And especially if we consider Jesse Eisenberg the main villain of the film, the true, manipulator of all things, which, may be the case, may not be the case, who knows. But if that is indeed the case, why then is Batman having more screen time than Superman when Superman's villain is the villain? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense.
What's crazy to me is that, like, what should have been done is, look, like it or not, Superman's the protagonist of this movie, at least in the beginning. I mean, whereas, as opposed to the end where they both are, Mm-hmm. Superman should be the protagonist from the start because, like it or not, you're the one. He's the one you've already met.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've already sided with him. You've got context for him, and so yes, then you show another point of view from this guy Bruce Wayne who sees everything that Superman has done as bad. The effect of him being here has been nothing but negative, and so you've got Bruce who, while for good intentions, at least for half the movie, is going to be structurally the antagonist, and it's going to be easy to see him as the antagonist because he's kind of a dick. He's real brooding. He's real dark. He's real depressed and angry, and he's wanting to hurt Superman, who we like, presumably, right? Right. And throughout the film with them fighting, it's going to be continual. It's going to be real effective because every time you're going to think, oh well, Superman, he'll just crush Batman. And every time Batman gets one over on him, you're going to be sort of like frustrated in a good way, like, oh man, God, Batman's so smart. So while him serving as the antagonist, it's true to character with him both being smarter than Superman and also being angry enough to confront him about what he's done. And so it completely works on that level, and then have them finally understand each other, And instead of just saying, all right, well, we're going to just do a flip-flop where you're not really going to know who to side with, which is stupid because you can side with both of them quite easily. They're doing all these shenanigans. And to me, it's so very clear how the story should have been tackled, and I just feel like they're losing confidence in themselves, and it's just like, I feel like Warner Brothers is Warner Brothers has a date in 4 hours. Yeah. And we, the audience, are their friend. And dinner's at 7. It's 3 o'clock. They've already showered, put on a suit, and now they're just standing around waiting to leave. And it's like, so then they start going, is this suit even that good? And it's like, hey, you got ready a little early, admittedly. Yeah. But relax. The only thing you've done wrong is you got everything ready your ducks in a row too soon. And now is not the time to be freaking out and second guessing yourself.
No, that's true, because
that will hurt your chance. You're going to be hungry in a minute, and you're going to want to poop, and you're going to wonder, like, but I already tucked my shirt in all nice. Like, so how do I poop without untucking? Do I poop down the pant leg? I can't do that though. Like, what do I do? And it's just like, just stop tinkering. Just leave it alone. Just stick to the plan. Stick to the plan.
Exactly. No, that's a good analogy, because you have to think about, like, this film was supposed to already be out. Yeah. According to its original release date, we should have already seen this movie.
Yeah.
So when you think about it that way, because Ben Affleck was announced as Batman 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And when you think about it that way, you have to realize this movie's pretty much in the can. They're just sitting on it, waiting for the release date at this point. And so that's a very accurate description. They're just getting cold feet because, like, the wedding is coming up, and is this the one? Is this the one that I want to spend the rest of my life with? This is the one that's going to launch our whole cinematic universe. If it's not right, you know what I mean? And that's what they're doing. And they're saying, I don't know, people didn't like Superman last time, so maybe we shouldn't have Superman in this movie. Maybe it should just be Batman, because people like Batman, because the last Batman movie did really well. And that's what they're doing. And they're not seeing, like, the fact that I think there's a hunger for a good Superman movie. And there's not that hunger for Batman because we've had a good Batman movie. We've had 3 good Batman movies, or 2.5. So we've had good Batman. We haven't had good Superman in a while. That should be the priority, along with the reasons of him being the crux of the universe. Just in our world, that should be the priority, is Superman, and Batman is the visitor. But what they're doing instead is they are putting all their eggs in Ben Affleck's basket, which, take it from Jennifer Garner, is not a good idea. And what happens is, when they do that, then of course they're saying, yeah, Ben, you can start writing the next Batman movie. Yeah, sure, you can do a trilogy. Yeah, sure, you can be in this movie. Yeah, you can be in that movie. You want to write it? You want to direct it? You want to star in it? You want to do all the things? Produce it? Sure, yeah, go ahead. And instead, so that's what they're doing, when they should, in fact, be saying, like, okay, Ben, we've got these plans in place. We appreciate your willingness and whatnot, and we're going to help you do these things. You can still write, you can still direct, you can still do all these things, but do those in our timetable. Don't make us bend to you, in other words. So, anyway, I don't know, man. It's just frustrating, like, as a fan of DC Comics, to see. And I love Batman. Batman's my favorite superhero, bar none. So for me to come out and say, more Batman, that's a big deal. But it just goes to show you that I think these other characters, Superman, The Flash, Aquaman, these characters can be strong characters, as long as you don't paint it where, like, okay, but, Batman needs to be a part of it. You know what I mean? So I don't want to see Aquaman movie and have, like, Jason Momoa be like, I'm going to save Atlantis, and then have Batman, like, show up and be like, I'll help you, just to help sell the Atlantis thing. So, I don't know. It's dumb. Whatever. Yeah.
No, I agree. All right. Well, I think we're going to close out this week's episode. That's some
good.
Juicy film news.
I know, right?
Hey, so if you want to leave us a comment or whatever, you can email us at hoopercast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Podbean, hoopercastpod.podbean.com. Those are the people that get us onto iTunes. Just search HooperCast and subscribe. Please write a good review. That would be lovely. hoopercastpod.tumblr.com, hoopercastpod.blogspot.com, and you can find us on Facebook, HooperCast, or on Twitter @HooperCast, or just use Google and then find any of those places I just mentioned too.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Dustin. Next week, buddy.
Yep, sounds good. I will see you then. Goodbye, everybody.
The Skype connection is so horrible, so I'm just hearing, yeah, I'll see you
That's how I said it.
Oh, okay.
Are you making fun of my speech impediment, Hooper? How dare you?
Like on this end, you sound like you have hiccups, like horrible hiccups. Like,
yeah.
That's how edit, Hooper. You make it fun.
Well, I'll say it again. Thank you for having me, Hooper.
There we go. That was nice and clear.
Yeah.
All righty,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Namaste.
Namaste.
And good luck.
Now it's time to say good night. Good night. Sleep tight. Now the sun.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by. When hope was high and the world worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving when I was young and unafraid. Okay.
I was wondering where we were going with this. Some good butt rock
do the
there,
whole
Hooper.
song. You know. Some what?
Some good butt rock.
Butt rock?
Butt rock. Have you never heard of butt rock?
No. I thought you
Google
made that
butt
up.
rock. Google butt rock. I'll look it up right now. Hold on. Let me tell you what butt rock is.
Butt rock. Oh, I see. A rock that you
Yes.
sit on. A rock that looks like a butt. That's what it says on Urban Dictionary.
A rock that looks like a butt. No,
band
it's
trademarked with cheap, unoriginal song lyrics. That's what I just did for sure. The vocalist hiding his lack of vocal talent by producing a deep and raspy voice, i.e. Nickelback and Creed. Yep.
Yep.
I was doing a
Butt rock.
little bit of that was a loose Tom Waits impression.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. I'm about to get
So
into
there's
that.
butt rock. I know.
Oh yeah, butt rock. So you can do butt rock with anything. Like happy birthday to you.
To you. Happy birthday. To you.
Happy birthday, dear Jesus. Oh yeah.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
How many more?
All right, buddy. I'll see you later.
All right, talk to you later.
All right.
Let Hooper take a turn. Hooper drives the boat, Chief.